What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back to a new review. For today we have a 3-axis gimbal called the Rigiet DOBOT, and this one right here costs about $200 and it can be used for smartphones and action cameras. If you plan on using this with an action camera, you're gonna have to buy an adapter for the action camera, and for the price I was kind of expecting to get that in the box. Since we are talking about the box, well, inside the box we get a very nice carrying case, and that's a nice thing to have mostly if you plan on traveling with this. We also have a user manual that's in English and it's got a whole bunch of important information, so I do recommend that you read the user manual because otherwise you're not gonna know how to use this. There are also some cables in there that you could potentially use with some action cameras, and this so you don't have to press the buttons on the action cameras. You can just start and stop recordings right from the gimbal. The gimbal has a rechargeable 3350 mAh battery, and to charge that battery takes about 2 hours. So you have a micro USB charging port on the side of the gimbal, and the gimbal can also be used while it's charging. So for example, if you attach a power bank to it, you can just keep going and going, and you're not gonna be running out of battery anytime soon. You can use this for about 2 hours to 2 hours and a half on one charge, and I guess that's more than enough for most situations. And whenever the battery is done, you can just put this in your bag, plug in a power bank, and then recharge it and start using it again after. The gimbal is mostly made out of metal and plastic, but it doesn't feel cheap by any means. So at the bottom we have some type of rubberized finish, and that makes it much more comfortable to hold because the gimbal is not gonna slip from your hand. And just above that we have a plastic plate and pretty much all the buttons available on the gimbal. On the right hand side we have a couple of plastic buttons, and the one at the bottom only works if you connect the gimbal to your smartphone through Bluetooth. Once connected to the phone, you can switch in between recording modes from that button. You can also switch in between the front or the rear camera, and you can also zoom with it. Just above that we have another button that has the 3 functions available, and that one works even if the phone is not connected to the gimbal. The first mode is called the pan following mode, and that's the mode that I use the most with this gimbal. So basically the gimbal will follow your movements left or right, and it makes the footage look very smooth. The second mode is called the locking mode, and basically the gimbal will lock the camera on one position. So let's say that you want to film that way, but you're moving, so you're walking. Well, the gimbal is going to keep the phone pointed in the exact same direction no matter what you do. So this is a very useful mode as well. And in the last mode, the gimbal will just follow all your movements. So up, down, left, right, everything that you do, the gimbal will follow. But I don't find this mode that useful. There is also a small joystick in there, and with that you can move left, right, up, down, so basically wherever you need to film, and you can also do some very smooth pans with the joystick, much smoother than you do just holding this with your hand and just moving it. At the top we have the locking mechanism for your phone, and that's made out of plastic, and it can fit phones up to 6 inches, maybe a bit longer. So I was using my Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus and I still had room for a somewhat larger device. Depending how long and heavy your phone is, the rear arm of the gimbal can also be adjusted. So before you turn this on, you basically have to make sure that the phone is as centered as possible, because this is gonna put less pressure on the gimbal itself whenever it's on. And lastly, on the back of the gimbal we have a screw hole, so you could technically attach this on a tripod. Now unfortunately the positioning of that hole is not great, so most tripods that you have at home aren't gonna work with this, and it actually took me like 5 tries and 5 different tripods to find one that actually fits with this gimbal. As I mentioned earlier, the gimbal has an app, and the phone can connect to the gimbal through the app. So the app is called the Rigiet app, and you can find it in the Google Play Store or the iOS Store. Once connected, you can start and stop recordings right from the gimbal. You can also take pictures right from the gimbal, so you don't have to touch the phone at all. And you can also switch in between modes right from the gimbal as well. The downside to this app is the maximum supported resolution for video recordings, and you're gonna find that you can only record in 1080p, but realistically we all have phones that can record in 4K. So this is the biggest downside for the app. We have a panoramic mode in there, so you select that mode, you press the recording button, and the gimbal will just spin around and take pictures where it needs to take pictures, and then we'll stitch those pictures together so you can get a cool panoramic picture. So that is a very useful mode in my opinion. Another useful mode, and that's probably the most exciting thing this gimbal has to offer, it's the active tracking mode. So you select an object on the screen, and then the gimbal will just follow everything that particular object does. And in my case I had an RC car because that was the easiest thing to have this tracking. You're gonna notice that the gimbal will lose the subject every now and then, but it does work good most of the time. Unfortunately, the maximum resolution for that active tracking mode is 1080p as well, and well, we all have phones that can record in 4K, so it would have been nice to have that option for 4K recordings. Personally, I'm never gonna use that app just because I don't wanna record anything in 1080p, and hopefully in the near future we can see an update for that app so we can get 4K capabilities. Till then, I'm just gonna use the camera app that comes with the phone because, well, I can record in 4K and all I have to do is start and stop the recording from the phone, so I'm not losing that much. Other than that, the gimbal works great as a 3-axis gimbal and it's gonna stabilize all your movements, so if you film a lot with your phone, it may be worth investing in something like this. But since that app it's not that useful, you could technically just get something cheaper that does the exact same thing. So I think I'm gonna keep this and I'm actually gonna take it with me on my next vacation because it has that cool carrying pouch and it's much easier to carry it around with that. I like the battery life, I like how easy it is to remove the phone from there, and pretty much I like everything about it except for the app that doesn't record in 4K. So it's a good product, but it could have been better, and hopefully that app can get an update in the near future and make it even better. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, press that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.